All right, jumping straight into it. Michael, thanks for being on the podcast today. So what's your 1%er?
Thanks, guys, for having me. I was thinking long and hard about the 1%, and I wanted to go with my first percent. So what I think about that 1% is just pause. And I think it's harder to do than you think. But for me, I'm a bit of an overthinker. I'm a bit of a, I think someone said it before, but a catastrophizer. But if I have the ability to just pause, whether I'm thinking about something or I've got something on, then I can, move forward to create action, or I can do something there. It's very hard to just stop in that moment and not get taken away or snowballed with different things. So for me, if you're in strife, or even if you're not, you've got a big decision to make. It's just pausing first.
Yeah, and that's a really good one to sort of start on, and it probably ties into quite a few of the other things that we've had on the podcast so far. So it's really good. But so how do you use that in your sort of day-to-day life?
Yeah, I mean, for me, it is probably that overthinking thing. So every decision for me is probably a big one. What do you have for breakfast? It's the same sort of, conundrum, if you like, as to, what do you do with your family, or what are you doing for work, and that sort of thing. So for me, if it comes up and I've got two things there, I want to be really present and I want to be really purposeful. So that's me just pausing and going, okay, I don't need to think too far ahead. I don't need to think too far in the past. I just need to make some movement now. And for me, that's a quick win. But before I get the quick win, I need to pause and stop that motion, because for me, it can be a bit of a wave. So I can get overwhelmed quite quickly, and that's what I found in sort of the past. It might be a bit of maturity or something, but I've come to realise that I just need to pause at some point to get the best out of me. Yeah.
And that's just to remove yourself from that thought process. Like, do I have Wheat Bix or toast? And you think, I've got to get the toaster out, and then I've got to clean it up, and then Wheat Bix, I'll just pour it in the bowl and go. And a breakfast example, is that what we're talking about?
Absolutely, that's right. And I think I probably reflect on the fight flight sort of thing. So before I even get to that point of fight or flight, it is okay. Well, I just need to consider something now. I just need to pause, make sure I'm taking stock, and then going from there. It's not necessarily I'm just going with the flow straight away because I don't know what's on the other side, I'm just not confident in that, so I need to pause.
Probably sort of arresting that paralysis of indecision, really, isn't it?
That's right, yeah, for sure.
Really good point. We'll dive deeper into that in a second. But look, guys, if you're enjoying what you're seeing so far, we would like it if you'd subscribe to the YouTube channel and, like sort of what we're sharing. I hope if this is something that is useful to you, you'll give us a like on Facebook. But tell us a little bit about you, like who is Michael, where are you from, what have you been doing, etc.?
Absolutely. So born and bred Ulverston boy. So I actually went to school with Reece. I suppose, grew up on the northwest coast, had a really good childhood, and then we took off, my partner Amber and I took off to Melbourne for six and a half years, and then returned mid-2021 back to the coast. So in that time I've done a bunch of different things work-wise, always been around a footy club, things like that. But generally speaking, I've always been customer facing, so whether it be sales, customer success, customer experience type stuff. So my most recent role was for a New Zealand company, a New Zealand software company, so I could do that remotely here in customer success. So
Did you find the person facing roles that you've had might have maybe filled your bucket a little bit too much, and that might be some of that indecision-y sort of paralysis of indecision there?
Yeah, it's an interesting question. I wouldn't necessarily say just the indecision piece, but I think it is a bit of a mix between who I think I am and who I am and things like that. So I do call myself a bit of a extroverted introvert. So I think I'm an introvert by nature, but I do really get some energy off being with other people and helping other people as well. So it does sort of come into that. And I suppose with a bit of history of anxiety as well, you can go across that spectrum, when you are in those customer-facing roles and you're expected to do that as well. So, probably a touch either way.
That definitely resonates with me. I feel like I'm definitely an introvert. I don't get energy from being with people necessarily. I've got probably a pretty big bucket to use, but I definitely get to a point I really need to fill that back up.
Yeah, I'm extrovert. More people the better, I reckon. Yeah. But how do you do with that pause? If you are in that, when you're at work, you can't just You know, you have to actually be there in the moment and still do it. Have you got tactics for that? Like, how do you remove yourself from that little situation if it is a work-based or, you know, a situation where you need to be present as well?
Yeah.
How do you remove yourself for that brief period of time to rethink? Do you have a tactic? Do you have something for us?
Yeah, it's a good call. It's one of those things that I probably do at a macro level and a micro level as well. So there are those times where you physically, you know, I might be talking too fast, or I might be breathing too heavy, or I might be doing this and that, and I do just need to take myself away, either from the room or whatever. But if you're on a phone call or you're taking training on a Zoom call, which I do, you know, day in, day out, it's probably at that real micro level that's sort of really hard to do, but in your brain, when you've got things going through, that you're sort of, you know, picking one thought up and taking it that way rather than seeing a bunch of thoughts. And that's probably one thing I've picked up is, as the analogy, is probably the sushi train. I think it's used a lot around the psychology sort of circles, but that helped me as far as, you know, if I've got, you know, so many thoughts or priorities, if you like, going around on that sushi train, I really just want to pick one up and focus on that for that period of time. So that really helps when you're in a conversation or you know, you're actively listening to someone. I'm going to, you know, pick one thing and then feed it back.
Definitely. And I've heard, you know, that before myself. I'm what I would probably describe myself much the same as you, sort of that introverted extrovert or extroverted introvert, however you want to put it. But basically, I, you know, like my own company, but also don't like, you know, I do get energy from people in certain situations, but also do find that to be also incredibly draining as well, which can be a struggle, particularly as someone that quite often facilitates training for, you know, groups of 20 plus people, and you are the centre of attention for 12 hours in the case of mental health first aid. But to your point of taking that moment to pause, and I think literally I just done it just then, but I do that often when facilitating training, and I'll use the script that I have as, I guess, my tool to sort of say, you know, just sillily, you know, I've just got to find where I'm at or whatever. And then realistically, I'm just using that as a way of just taking that second to just
Collect yourself.
breathe. Yeah, collect yourself. Like, let your brain, you know, so often do we just try and let our brain regurgitate everything that's coming out without thinking about what we're actually trying to convey or say. And that's where I think it's really important to have that moment of pause where you think, you try and understand how you're trying to articulate something, etc. So yeah, for me, I think that's a really valuable goal.
I think I resonate with that absolutely as well, because you can only be so prepared, and other people aren't going to come away from one of your trainings and say, I remember that one time he took a 2-second pause and, you know, the whole thing didn't make sense. and I think, yeah, exactly. And I think for me, that was the whole thing. I was just like, oh, what are people thinking of me? Or am I scared of that white space? Just do it. You know, just take that 1 or 2 seconds and, you know, it's not going to come back to you. It's going to benefit you.
You don't have to have every second filled with noise or filled with sound. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think from an outside of that point of view, like taking those times to pause could come back to, you know, what Jonathan mentioned in the first episode of prioritizing tasks. That's kind of the sushi train sort of analogy in, you know, prioritizing what's really important as it goes around on that sort of conveyor belt, and then like really hyper focusing on those one things so you're not overwhelming yourself.
And being aware that it'll come back. If you miss something, you more than likely have another chance to pick it back up and go again. Yeah.
For me, like listening to some of the other guys on the podcast recently, it's probably me for my first percent. That pause then allows you to go on to, you know, reflect or prioritise or plan, you know, those things that we've had on the podcast. So I suppose that's the way I was thinking about the 1%. And I can sort of just touch on one thing is probably, you know, how I thought about that was sort of Maslow's hierarchy as well. If you don't pause, you can't go further. But if you don't have that sort of safe space or that level of self-esteem, you can't get to self-actualization. So you can't actually do some of that reflective practice unless you pause and take stock and feel that safety as well first.
Yeah, sounds really good. I like the so you prioritise those different values of go again on what you're saying about how you choose which one you take first and whatnot from that train as such.
Yeah. So that train absolutely. But yeah, I suppose what I was saying there about the hierarchy. If you think about a triangle, if you've got physical safety, you need that to operate, and then you're looking at your social safety or your self-esteem and things like that. But that sort of psychological safety can come from yourself as well. So I was probably scared of that, and that's why I need to pause before I go into something as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's probably a good way to segue into the next sort of point. But tell us how, like I know you've sort of mentioned it a little bit already, but a little bit about your personal experiences. How did they lead you to, I guess, look for or find, develop, whatever it is, this understanding of your 1%?
Yeah, I think it's probably a couple of things. So I'll touch on the mental health journey, I guess, initially, and that's something that I've sort of gone through from sort of 17 in different ways. So initially it was probably a bit of that teen angst and identity sort of stuff coming out of school and not knowing what to do, and then not thinking I needed any help or those sort of things coming through to now. But another aspect of that was probably my uni degree, actually, because I went back to uni mid-20s and did sort of a human-centred design sort of course, and that was all about problem solving but checking assumptions and things like that. So to know, you've got to sort of know the problem and redefine the problem before you can action it. And so that was sort of the pause for that problem solving methodology. So for me, I was just pairing that right back to that micro level of, okay, well, I need to understand what's going on first before I can make an informed decision, if you like. Because prior to that, I was getting taken away with things. I was snowballing. I was letting myself get into that, also because I probably thought I deserved to feel what I was feeling and that sort of thing. So, yeah, that probably culminated in that understanding of, hey, I just need to pause here and probably with a bit of maturity as well, to give myself that break and to give myself a little bit of that space to go, which I probably wasn't doing. I was focusing on other people or other things rather than actually looking inward.
It's interesting to see how many different engineering principles can be applied to this mental health stuff. It's absolutely crazy. Like, you've got that one, but then you need to understand the problem before you develop the solution. But then you've got, if something's causing you harm, you start going through the hierarchy of controls of elimination or isolation and all that sort of stuff. It's really cool that we've got all this stuff on this big macro level around dealing with problems, but how many people just make the link it to your own personal stuff? It's pretty crazy that all these tools are kind of being developed already for another problem.
Being able to relate it to yourself and your own sort of feelings and emotions, I suppose, in a way, like
being connected with yourself enough to make those parallels, I think.
Yeah.
And I think that's important. Sorry, just to jump on that one as well, is to break it down into those chunks and actually see that on a micro level. You think about it macro. If I thought about it macro, which I did for first 6, 7, 8 years of going through some stuff, I wanted to know the solution right away.
Yeah.
And I wanted to know the cause right away. You don't need to know that then and there, but breaking it down and going, okay, I'm pausing, I'm considering, and then understanding a little bit more piece by piece. 1% was so beneficial. Yeah.
Is this area that you're sort of talking about, that the need to pause, is that something that you've seen in others, like so friends, family, etc.? Something that you would recommend? I guess you are recommending it here, but from a more personal level, people close to you, is that something that you think would obviously benefit like everyone, or is it sort of very specific to, I guess, being a extroverted introvert? Or
Look, I think it probably benefit everyone in a sense, and you've got to control it for what you want to do, and it's very hard. And when we're talking about 1%, it took me a long time to get to that 1%, and that's why I sort of said it's the first percent, because it probably allows you to go a bit further after you've done that. But yeah, I think just as a general rule, you can make of it what you will, but it is just pausing, and it applies to different things. For me, it really applies on that micro level of thought process and catching myself mid-thought and saying, hey, that's a dark road to go down. I'm going to stop here and actually consider why. So maybe just asking yourself, why am I doing this, or why am I thinking this, or why is it a consideration? So I think everyone can do that on different level. But yeah, I think it can be a benefit just to appreciate the white space sometimes, and just pause or look at that sushi train and not pick up too many things.
And this is frequently for you during the day. This doesn't happen once or twice. This happens.
This is just about every decision, just about everything at the moment.
So it's not something you can sit and write down at the end of the day because it'd just be too much.
Yeah. I think it's probably allows you to do that, and there's probably certain points throughout the day that it's great to reflect and write down. But for me, it's sort of an in the moment. It's an in the moment thing that goes. You're not even considering it, so it's training that thought over a period of time, and that's probably why I say it's not easy as well, because it's probably more of a clinical thing that.
I think there's going to be a lot of people that resonate with this one, and the fact that they do have those thoughts more than what they probably think, and this might trigger for that for them. So probably maybe try and delve into more about taking that pause even and just saying, is there something more specific that you do in that moment to be able to do it? Do you have one train of thought that you go back to? Or not really.
It's a great
hard
question.
one. It'd be a hard one to
Yeah.
answer to, I suppose. But yeah.
Yeah, I mean, when I was doing some sort of more of the therapy sort of stuff, it was trying to imagine a blank piece of paper. So imagine you've sort of got like a Word document or something, and the words are coming across the screen. Do you pause that with one word, or do you pause that with 10 words, or have you got a full paragraph there and it's whooshing past sort of thing? So yeah, I don't know. I think that's probably one thing you could do. Just try and get it to blank initially, and that's it might be a 5-minute process, but it might be a half a second process where you're just like, okay, I'm stopping before you keep going. But yeah, it is a tough one to like put into practice. At a more macro level, for me, it's sort of similar things to going outside for a walk, or doing some of the breathing exercise that some of the guys have talked about, and things like that. So it might be a little bit of a reflection thing, but yeah, different levels.
Definitely requires some training though, by the sounds of it.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, for me, it was a lot of that sort of stuff that I think Jeff mentioned, the catastrophization sort of stuff. For me, like I'd have one thought and then 5 thoughts would jump on top of it, and then 10 thoughts would jump on top of it. So it's more of a snowball thing. So if I can catch it at that first thought and just go, okay, well, why am I thinking this? It cannot be reframed to more of a positive or some more of a neutral thing that I can work with a bit better. Because historically I was sort of thinking, yep, that's the right thing to think, and I'd keep going with those extra 5, 10, 15 thoughts, and then by that time I was just beating myself up at that stage.
So we might move on from that now and move on to the next topic. But as you've listened to a couple of the pods now, like we sort of tend to wrap up a little bit on what advice would you give to younger Michael? So I'm not going to throw an age on it, but just thinking back on yourself now, what do you wish from like this 1%er sort of conversation? What do you wish that younger Michael knew that you know now?
I think it probably is that sort of give yourself a break sort of mentality. And, I was pretty harsh on myself, wanted, probably, just put the goals up there and things like that. But, you can actually take some time. You can take some time to think and reflect and do something a little bit different and give it a go, or make some mistakes and things like that. So I think give yourself the time to do that, but also when you're thinking about that, it is being present. So what I was saying before about not looking too far behind, like for answers or something like that, and not looking too far into the future about goals and where you want to be. Like where you are is absolutely fine. You just take that next step and chunk it right down. So I'd probably do that. And what I mean by chunking it right down, for me, it's probably roles. So, I do one thing of a day that's, being a good partner or being a good brother or being a good son or being a good worker. As long as you sort of tick one thing off a day for each of those roles or one thing a week, I think that'd be good, and I'd be happy if younger Michael knew those.
The goals one actually speaks to me a bit. There is such a push in society to have your life mapped out as far as you can see, and I don't think that's necessarily positive or healthy.
Yeah, definitely.
Some of those goals are pretty good. Like they're big. They want you to achieve over and beyond. But do you really need? Does everyone need to want to be the president? They don't, or president, whatever, prime minister. No one wants to do that. Not no one, but very few people, sort of thing. Like, and not everyone can do those sorts of things. So we need to be a bit more content and in the moment with what we have, and have those little goals. You know, make someone smile today. That's it. That's all we have to do, and then they're happy. Or do your role as a partner or a son or a brother. Do that one role for the week. Check in on them, see if they're okay, or go and mow their lawns, or something little that you can do to help them is a massive tick.
Absolutely. Those little things add up, those quick wins.
Yeah.
Yeah.
1%ers.
That's it. A good spot, I think, to stop. Thanks, mate. Thanks for coming on. Look, if any of the stuff throughout this episode has been triggering, please contact Lifeline on 13 11 14 or contact your local GP and just have a bit of a chat. It's always a good option to have a chat about your mental health and that kind of stuff. But, take note, pause.
Yeah. If you like what you're doing, give us a like and a subscribe. Subscribe, and hopefully you see a bit more of us.
Thanks, everyone.
Good.
Cheers.
Cheers,
guys.
Thanks, Michael. Cheers.